So let's get right to it with NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans, Justin Wolfers, professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan, and Reuters White House correspondent Jeff Mason. Christine, I'd like to start with you. What are we seeing with the markets right now? There was this crazy blip earlier this morning when it sounded like there was a rumor that these tariffs might be delayed. Did that go away? Just please tell us where we are.
It was so insane. I mean, that is an official technical market term. Look, I was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange when this happened. Suddenly you had like a huge rally in the stock market on talk. Everyone screaming that the president was going to pause these tariffs for 90 days, except for China. And we know from Bill Ackman, the billionaire who was a Trump supporter, he had told the president, he had said in a post, hey, the president should pause these things. Anyway, the whole thing turned into a rumor that ran through the internet and ran through the markets, and then suddenly was debunked and the market came down again. I think what it shows you is just how jumpy everyone is. It shows you just how concerned people are about every single whiff of news, even rumors about what's happening in the trade war. And it just shows you how important this trade war is to the future of the U.S. economy and the global economy. What you heard from Bill Ackman, he called for a nuclear winter in the economies around the world if these tariffs aren't taken off. So just a very, very jumpy, edgy, and just dread is the word I would use in the investment community right now.
I mean, it's so dire, Gabe. The president was asked specifically about whether or not he's trying to intentionally tank stocks. You know, he was golfing this weekend when this 10% tariff hit. Can you talk about the optics here?
Well, Christina, the White House really doesn't seem to care, at least not publicly. They are doubling down on all this. And just a short time ago, as you said, President Trump posting on social media that he is threatening a 50% tariff against China if they don't withdraw their retaliatory tariff. Now, look, yes, the president over the past few days spent a bunch of his time in his golf course in Florida. But I spoke with a White House official just this morning who stressed that he was still doing work, and they don't seem too bothered by some of the response they've been getting from even some Republicans who are worried about the effect that these tariffs will have on many Americans, on their retirement accounts. But the White House just sees this as something that needs to happen, as you just mentioned, that the president's saying that this is medicine. They've been running with that metaphor for the last several days, even as the Dow continues to drop there. And they really see this as a kind of rejiggering of the global economy and something that he is not backing off of, Christina.
Jeff, there's also been a bit of mixed messaging as to whether the purpose of this is to start a negotiation or whether these things are not negotiable. The White House says 50 countries have requested tariff talks, and Israel is going to be the first to negotiate in person today. Israel, who were reportedly offered to go to mutually zero tariffs. What do we expect out of that meeting?
Well, I think for sure that they're going to be talking about tariffs at that meeting. Obviously, there are a lot of other topics that will be coming up in a meeting between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel, not least of which the war in Gaza. But tariffs are at the top of the list for President Trump right now for all countries that he feels have treated the United States unfairly, and Israel is one of them, despite that close relationship, despite the fact that we've been allies for decades. But that same criteria applies to all of the countries that President Trump has imposed tariffs on, and he's keeping them on until or unless they reduce theirs. And you asked about deals and mixed messaging. There certainly has been some, but I think it is fair to assume, based on what the president has said, because let's remember it's his final word that matters at the end, that if other countries come and offer him a deal and he takes it and or negotiates it further, then that's something that President Donald Trump wants. He considers himself a deal maker, and he applies that to this as well.
And to that point, Justin, the president now says he's only going to negotiate if countries zero out the trade deficit. Let's take a listen.
They're dying to make a deal, but I said, we're not going to have deficits with your country. We're not going to do that, because to me a deficit is a loss. We put a big tariff on Europe. They are coming to the table. They want to talk, but there's no talk unless they pay us a lot of money on a yearly basis.
Justin, I will fully admit to getting a not nice grade in my grad school economics class, but is that how trade deficits work? Most of these are free economies. Can you make a top-down policy to instantly level out a trade deficit, or is that a more market-driven figure?
Not only can you not do it, you don't want to do it. This is someone who, Christina, I don't care how poorly you did in your graduate school economics, you still did better than this bloke. Look, here's the way to think about it. I have a trade deficit with Trader Joe's. I go to Trader Joe's once a week and I buy a bunch of stuff, so I'm buying stuff from them. And when I'm at Trader Joe's, I say to them, I'm here, I'm willing to sell you economics lectures, and for some reason they never buy anything from me. The question is, could I immediately remedy that trade deficit? The only way to do that would be by stopping buying anything from Trader Joe's altogether. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how global trade works. And the terrifying thing is, this isn't just me coming to you. This is every economist in the United States, with the exception of one. That one is Peter Navarro, who turns out to be the convicted felon who's currently advising the president. What he needs to do is look outside the White House and get some advice from someone else, because this is pure destruction.
I also want to ask you, Justin, you said the pain is going to be 50 times worse than what Trump's first-term policies created. Is that hyperbolic? Do you really believe that? And how are we going to really fundamentally feel it change our lives here in the U.S.?
No, so that is a very literal estimate. The logic of this is, I'm not going to get into this part of it, which is the cost of a tariff rises with the square of a tariff. So small tariffs, small problems, big tariffs, big squared problems. How does this play out for you and I? Well, next time you go to the grocery store, just pick a few things off the shelf, and rather than checking out the price, check out where it came from. You'll discover that all of our lives are profoundly integrated with people all around the world. And even if it says made in America, it's probably made in America, often with ingredients or inputs from abroad. And then go to work and think about certainly your job, your work is being exported all around the world. And so what's going to happen is, effectively, President Trump is cutting you and I off from all of the glorious variety and richness that we get from engaging with the rest of the world.
And Gabe, you heard Justin talk about how it's been few and far between economists who think this is going to be a good idea. We're also starting to hear from business leaders, including, ironically, Elon Musk, who said over the weekend he wants free trade with the EU. There were big hands-off protests across the country this weekend. What typically happens when the president feels backed into a corner? Do we expect this to alter his behavior in one way or another?
Well, Christina, he typically lashes out. Not indication that he feels backed in a corner quite just yet, but you are right. Elon Musk, a top Trump advisor and huge ally of this administration, has now for the past several days been touting the benefits of free trade. And a senior White House official telling me earlier today that Elon is entitled to his own opinion. Now, you see the president right there. He is slamming his critics and slamming those Republicans that may be thinking about opposing him, telling him, don't be weak, don't be stupid, don't be a panicking. Apparently combining panic and Republican there and coining a new term. But the president has repeatedly said that this is something that it's central not just to his political identity, Christina, but he keeps repeating that he has been talking about this for decades, even before he entered politics. So the White House, despite this chorus of criticism that we're hearing because of this market chaos, they at this point seem to stay the course. And they reiterated to me, despite that fluctuation earlier today with that rumor of some sort of 90-day pause in these tariffs, they are stressing that is not the case, and that is simply incorrect. They are staying the course, at least for now. Christina.
Jeff, there's also talk the tariffs could lead to a $2,300 iPhone. What is that about?
Well, I think that's just one example of where inflation may manifest as a result of these higher prices. And I want to thank you for asking Justin the question you did earlier about the economics of tariffs, because he did a better job of taking that on than I could. But I think broadly, the answer to your question here is that prices are going to go up. And the iPhone, based on where it's made and where the parts come from, and the presence that it has in China is going to be impacted by these increasing tariffs on China. So that is a good example of a product that a lot of Americans use, and there are a bunch of other examples as well.
So, Christine, what can Americans do to keep their money safe? Are we at the put it in a shoebox under your bed phase, or are there other better options?
I like high yield savings accounts. Shoebox, you don't get any return on that investment. But look, there are a lot of people running out trying to figure out where their cash is and if they have too much stocks and how close they are to retirement. You know, if you've got kids close to going to college or you're saving in a college savings fund, I totally get that anxiety. The Treasury Secretary told Kristen Welker that people close to retirement aren't looking at their 401ks day by day. My reporting would be show a different demographic, people who are very concerned here. So talk to a financial professional if you're close to retirement or you need to tap those 529 savings funds. And if you have cash, you know, make sure you're getting the biggest return on it that you can. If you need to buy a car, go out and get the employee pricing that's being offered now. A car will be more expensive in a year.
All right, Justin, same question to you. What's your advice for Americans who might be stressing out looking at their 401ks and bank accounts?
Look, none of us know which way the market's going to go. The one thing I do want to point out here is that what we've seen so far is not the end of it, which is at the moment markets are still pricing in some chance that Trump backs off. And so we've seen stocks fall 14%, even though we're not certain that he's going to stay the course. In terms of advice, the only thing that's obviously true is these are turbulent times, and if you don't have the stomach for risk, stay out of it. And beyond that, if you think you know what's going to happen, I tend to tell people to be a little more modest. It's very hard to time the market.